My name is Sarah Houtman. I am a co-owner of Filster Holsters, and I own Cade Imaging, which is a video production company based in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And today we're going to talk about the number one best way to make your videos look more professional, and that is with lighting. Whether you're live streaming, video conferencing, or filmmaking, whatever it is you want to do, lighting is fundamental. The good news is it's probably easier than you think to get professional looking results at home. This is a case where knowledge is more important than gear by a long shot. Have you ever gone to the range with a new shooter and they tell you they think they need a new gun because theirs is always shooting low left? And they're sure that you must be getting such good results because you're using a more expensive gun? Yeah, this is basically just like that. It's a little bit humbling the first time a better shooter takes your gun and shoots a bullseye with it, but it's a learning moment, and it shows you the potential of even low quality gear in skilled hands. The principles of lighting are just like that. Investing your time into learning the foundation principles will help you get better results with whatever gear you have available. The main topics we're going to cover today include light softness and light placement. Those two things together will give you the most useful foundation to improve your own setup at home. We're going to be moving pretty quickly and skimming over some very deep concepts, so if you have questions, make sure to put them in the comments on the Facebook or the YouTube live stream, and I will circle back around and answer questions online afterwards. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to soften your light. Light sources can be hard or soft. Hard light looks harsh and it creates deep shadows. Soft light wraps around your subject and it's usually more forgiving. So let's take a look at some quick examples so you can get an idea of the difference, and then we'll go more in depth on why it looks the way it does. This is hard light, and this is soft light. You can tell this is hard light by the shadows. So take a look at how sharp and how clearly defined the shadows are underneath John's chin. You can see a sharp shadow from the stem of his glasses, and you can also see a tiny pinpoint reflection in the light in his eye. So all of those things together show us that this is hard light. And sometimes you might want hard light for artistic effect, but it's not always the most flattering look for your subject. With soft light, you can see how the shadows are much less defined. The reflection in John's eyes is larger, and the hard outline of his glasses is gone. Our light is still coming from the same direction, and the shadows are still in the same place. They're just a lot softer. Most people will find soft light to be much more flattering. So what is it that makes the light hard or soft? That's actually controlled by the size of the light source compared to the size of the subject. So if the light source is a tiny little pinpoint, then the light is going to be hard. But if the light source is a huge soft box that's like as tall as I am, then the light's going to be soft. So as you might be able to guess, it's not so much the absolute size of the light source that matters. It's the relative size of the light source compared to the subject. So for an example here, the sun is a huge light source. It's like many times the size of the Earth, yet it appears as a hard light source because it's so far away that it appears small in relation to the size of a human. So if your light source is relatively larger, it's going to look softer. So now we know that we want large, soft light sources to make our video lighting more flattering. So how do we get a large light source? The easiest way is to use a light modifier. A modifier is something that changes the shape of your light. So to take a hard light source and make it appear bigger and softer, we need to take those pinpoint light rays and scatter them around. And we can do that by shining them through something, like shining through a diffusion cloth, or we can bounce them off of something, like a reflector or a bounce card. You can buy light modifiers, or you can make them yourself. You can spend $0 or thousands of dollars. It is totally up to you. For diffusers, you can purchase sheets of diffusion paper or diffusion fabric from a photography supply store, or you can use something like a translucent shower curtain or wax paper. The diffuser I use most often is literally just a sheet of $20 diffusion cloth that is stapled to my ceiling. It's not pretty, but it works really well. So what I do is I put my light behind it and shine through it. And that takes that hard light source and softens it up so that it appears to be the size of that entire sheet rather than just the size of the bulb. A bounce card can be as simple as a piece of foam core board from the craft store. Even a large sheet of paper or a white wall can be used in a pinch. Really, the goal is to get the look you want, so feel free to be creative with how you get there. So next we'll look at a behind-the-scenes picture to show how we got our soft and hard light source shots. So you can see here that we're using 2 reflectors. So these are 2 pieces of foam core from the craft store, and by bouncing our light bulb, our hard light source, off of these reflectors, we take a hard source and make it nice and soft. The light we're using for this is actually just one of these work lights from Home Depot, and if you've seen my previous Amm-Con presentations, you will recognize this light. I use this one a lot. It's really handy. It costs about 25 bucks. So you can see it's basically just a naked light bulb, so it's a very small pinpoint light source. And by itself, it's not very flattering. However, when we bounce it off our big piece of foam core, it becomes a big soft light source and gives us a much more flattering effect. Next, we're going to talk about something called 3-point lighting. This is a classic, easy lighting setup that can be done on any budget, like literally any budget, including zero. So don't be scared off by the name 3-point lighting because you don't actually need 3 dedicated lights. In the example we just showed, we used 1 work light and a desk lamp. So a basic 3-point lighting setup has, as you may have guessed, 3 light sources. The first one is called the key light, and that's the one on our left side of our picture here. It's usually the brightest light of your scene, and it's the most important of the 3 because it controls the overall look of your shot. You want to put your key light in front of you, about 45 degrees to one side and slightly above your head. That'll give you a pleasing dimensionality to your face. If you put your key light directly in front of your face, your facial features will tend to look flat. And if your light is too high, you're going to get heavy shadows under your brows. If it's too low, if you wear glasses, you'll tend to get reflections in your glasses. So you have to kind of experiment with what works best for your shape of face and for your scene and for, whatever you've got going on. But generally speaking, 45 degrees is a good starting point, and you can adjust from there. So with only a key light, you get a great 3D look on your face, but there's a little too much shadow and it kind of makes the mood of this shot over dramatic. So the next light in our setup is called a fill light. A fill light fills in the shadows from the key light and it balances out your face to provide a more even look. So in this picture, our fill light is on the right hand side here, and you want it about 45 degrees opposed from your key light. So we've got our key light on the left, our person in the middle there, and then our fill light is reflecting light back into the shadows. So again, here's how that looks with just the key light, and here's how it looks with both the key light and the fill light. So you can see how that just kind of evens things out. It makes things look a little more friendly and a little less dramatic. Now, if you're going for drama, that's one thing. But generally speaking, if you want to improve your video quality, look like a trustworthy and reputable person, go for the kind of higher key, more friendly look rather than the super dramatic look. So you can see from this that our key light is reflected off this reflector on the right-hand side. Our fill light is just taking those light rays and reflecting them back into our model's face. So our fill light is not quite as bright. Its job is basically just to support the key light, not overpower it. If you're using 2 lights, you'll want to use a lower setting on your fill light. But if you don't have two lights, that is totally okay. You can use a reflector or a bounce card instead, like we did in our example. And now the last light in our 3-point lighting setup is the backlight. This one helps separate you from the background, and it's optional, so you may or may not need one. If your face and your clothing are clearly separate from the background already, you're probably good to go. But if you have a black background and say you're wearing a dark colored shirt, it can kind of look like you're blending into the background. So here's a picture with all three lights. So here's just our key light. Here's our key light and our fill light. And here's the difference with the backlight. So you can see it lightens up the background a little bit. And it also puts a little rim of light over our model's right-hand shoulder that just kind of helps pop him away from the background a little bit. And actually, what I could have done to make this scene look better is put the backlight on the other side. So if I had put the backlight on the left side of the frame, it would have had a little better effect and separated him from the background even better. But this is the kind of thing that you kind of experiment with and you play around with your setup and you figure out what looks the best. So as you can see again here, we've got a desk lamp that's behind our subject, which gives us light on the background and helps kind of keep him from blending in and looking like a floating head in the darkness. So you just learned how to soften your lights and how to position your lights, and those two concepts are going to massively improve your home studio setup. So if you do nothing else, soften your lights and place them so that they're flattering to your features. Now here are all of those shots together so you can kind of compare the differences. And I think we'll jump right ahead next to our next topic, which is color temperature. Now, this one is a little bit hard to get your mind around, so what I'm going to do is show some examples. You don't necessarily need to know the numbers on this, right? So every light source has what's called a color temperature, which is basically a number that measures how warm or how cool it looks. And since we're doing this at a basic level, we're not going to get super deep into the science of it, but just know that when we say color temperature, we're talking about the warmth or coolness of the light. And what's really important with that is that all of your light sources need to match each other, and they need to match the white balance of your camera. Now, your camera may have automatic white balance, where the camera decides how to make the scene look right, or it may have manual white balance, which you have to set yourself. So take a look at your camera manual, or just do a YouTube search for your camera model in the words white balance, and you'll probably come up with some tutorials on how to change your white balance and how that works. Now, it doesn't matter really so much which color temperature of lights you choose, as long as all of the lights in your scene match. So your camera can be set to match whatever lights you pick out. Where you're going to run into problems is when your color temperatures are mixed, and then your camera won't know what to choose and you end up with some really weird looks. So here's an example. So this is a sheet of plain white cloth. This is actually the back side of our diffusion material that we looked at earlier. So this is white cloth, but you can see it looks orange. And that's because the light on the left is daylight balanced, which means its color temperature matches a standard sunny day. And the light on the right is what's called tungsten balance, which means it's like a desk lamp or like an interior light or like a soft white light bulb. Those are warmer in tone. So you can see the light on the right has a much warmer color temperature than the one on the left. So when I balance my camera for the daylight bulb, the sheet on the left looks white because it's balanced for that color temperature of light. Now, when I balance my camera for the warmer tungsten bulb, now the sheet on the right looks white and the daylight bulb looks really blue. And those are the same bulbs, so nothing has changed. They're the exact same way. The only thing that changed is the white balance of the camera. So your camera can be balanced for whatever you choose, and that's totally fine, as long as all of your lights in your scene match. Now here's an example of the camera trying to guess. So this is the camera on automatic white balance, and it's trying to guess which of these lights is the correct color temperature, and it can't because they're mixed. So you end up with this kind of weird, like purpley orange. Ugh. It's not attractive. And you can imagine if you were trying to light your skin tones, how weird it would look if you had, say, a desk lamp on one side of you and sunlight on the other side. So as long as all of your lights match, you're good to go. But if you mix the two color temperatures, they're always going to look weird. And you can kind of see what that does on the plain white sheet, and so you can just imagine how that would look on your face. The same thing can happen when you mix fluorescent lights and LED lights, or different brands of bulbs, or if you're using sunlight and artificial light together. Really the main way this bites people is if you have a window in your office. So say you've got your live stream lights all set up over here, and you've got a window over here, and your face will look normal, but you'll have like a blue glow on one side, or you'll have like a green glow on one side. So it's helpful to take a look at your entire shot and watch for any areas where you may have mixed lighting. And if you do, there's a couple solutions for that. You can buy all your bulbs together, so they're all the same brand and same temperature. Or you can use what's called a gel, which is like a colored sheet that goes in front of the light to change the color. So we talked a little bit about that last year. So if you're curious about how to change the color temperature of your bulbs, check out last year's live stream, and we went over that in a little more detail. Okay, so I know that was a lot, and it was kind of all at once, but hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. And since we are not live, we won't have any questions. But if you're looking to get more in depth on any of these topics, I would highly recommend checking out YouTube for further resources. There are a lot of really helpful tutorials about how to improve your lighting, and you can get really in depth on any of these topics that we kind of skimmed over today. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you're inspired to go out and create great Second Amendment media.